Welcome to another edition of the Crotchety Old Men Podcast. Hey, I'm George Crumley, one of your hosts, and I've got my brother here in the studio with me, PC Clements. PC, how we doing today?
Hey man, everything is beautiful. I'm 6 feet above, which is about as tall as I'm ever going to get in this life. And you know what I mean when I say that. So it's all beautiful, and I'm here with my brother George, and we're ready to roll.
Sounds good. Statistics say that you shrink as you get older, but we're not going to talk about that. That's not the subject for today, but just keep that in
Absolutely not.
mind. So yeah, we're gonna talk a little bit about microplastics today. You may have heard of this, on the news or just in some information that may have passed you. But we think it's a subject that's maybe not talked about enough, and we want to just kind of touch base on it and give you a little bit of information. So, I've looked it up a little bit, and I've found out that microplastics. Before I get into that, PC, why don't you just tell our audience what microplastics are?
Microplastics, thanks for passing that on, George. And you're absolutely right. Microplastics are small, fiber like pieces of plastic. They're found in your water that you drink from plastic bottles. Um, they're found in clothing. A lot of your clothing that's not that has fibers that are not natural fibers. They have plastics in the fibers for them to be strong, for them to be waterproof, that kind of thing. And so you have these microplastic fibers and pieces are like little shivers, little shards of plastic that actually have been getting into our bodies, and they haven't really been publicizing it too much because they're publicizing the effects of plastics as it relates to nature. And so now the tide is turning. The Journal of American Medical Association is starting to look at the not only the incidence of plastics in our microplastics in our bodies, but the effects of it as well.
Yeah, I found it interesting that microplastics can be found in seafood, and the reason I found it interesting, obviously, is because a lot of us eat seafood. But the way it gets there is because of people using our oceans, as depositories of plastic bottles and plastic everything else. And then one of the other things is sea salt. A lot of people, oh man, you got sea salt, oh, regular salt. But then they say there's a lot of microplastics in sea salt here again because of the same reason, because people have, disposed of a lot of plastic items in the sea. So I think that's really concerning to me. But, here again, it can be found in beer because beer is there's used a lot of water in making beer. So, for me, I understand the EPA says there's no real alarm because there's not enough in there to really affect you. But from my perspective, is if I'm using these items on an ongoing basis and on a regular basis, I would think that if you're not passing this through your system, there would be a buildup, and it could be some harm. So what is that? Am I tracking in the right direction?
You're hitting the nail right on the head. You're in the way I like the way you frame it because you're looking at it from uh, um, a environmental status. You see what I'm saying?
Mm.
I'm looking at it as a medical status. So let's bring the two together. So here's what happens is that they're they're finding out, and when I say they, the Journal for American Medical Association, CNN, PBS has done some coverage with this, and what they're finding out is that these microfibers are being absorbed. Um, and let's think about this for a minute. You've got plastic bottles that you drink water out of. You just mentioned the absorption of sea salt. with the microfibers, and the microfibers from the cesspool of plastic garbage that's constantly thrown in the ocean and rivers and lakes and so forth. And that's the reason why you got microplastics in seafood and so forth. So let's take it a step further. So as you're dealing with all these instances that you deal with on a regular basis, okay, think about how much you're ingesting microplastics into your body on a regular basis. For instance, CNN did a study, 2024, and what CNN found was that in autopsies, microplastics were found in brain tissue uh, by 50% increase between the years of 2016 to 2024. That's a huge increase. The chemical that's in the plastic is called bisphenol, and bisphenol is a toxic chemical that causes a lot of toxicity in the brain, and it causes a lot of toxicity in other tissues. We have microplastics not just in brain tissue, but they found it in gut tissue, intestine tissue, and so we have to really think carefully about how we process our foods, how we process our water that we drink, and so on, George.
So yeah, I mean, I think that's what we've done is you've given us a good idea as far as what I was saying, as far as if you're eating this on a regular basis, it's bound to show up. But what's the harmful effects of it?
Well, the microplastics find their way past the blood brain barrier, and the blood brain barrier, you have various layers of the brain that protects the brain, and that goes from mylar sheathing to cartilage and so forth and so on. So when a substance like plastics get beyond the blood brain barrier, it sinks into the tissue. The problem is that it creates toxicity to the level of it throws off your hormones. Men suffer from ED so much more. Um, and there are all kinds of sicknesses that are related to microplastics to get into the body, and it's becoming a serious issue. And I guess what perplexes me about science is that they talk about the effects of plastics in the ocean and on land and so forth, but they very seldom, until recently, have started talking about the effects of plastics in the body. And I guess that's because, your environmental agencies and your FDA and so forth, they're putting food, they're putting water in plastics. It's cheap. Um, and they don't want to, they talk about messing up the ecosystem, but, that would mess up the economic system as well, which is something that they don't want to do. And that's just my
Interesting.
suggestion.
Interesting. So basically, you're saying that even though the EPA is saying that there's not enough to impact our bodies, you're saying that there's studies that saying that it is affecting, because I'm reading that it could affect like your immune system.
It does. It affects your immune system, and it leaves your immune system defenseless against
Hmm.
other toxins, not just, the microplastics, but you've got other toxins and you've got other biochemicals and biohazards that the body needs to fight, that the microplastic renders it defenseless against.
Yeah. So it sounds like this is another one of those things where they're saying that it meets the minimum levels, where someone has decided that there's an amount of plastic that you can sustain in your body and not have an effect on it. Um, Interesting. I find that to be interesting. I'm not going to say
And
hard to
that's
believe,
crazy.
but it
And
sounds
that's kind
interesting.
of that's kind of what the government has allowed for, and that's why I say, you have these minimums and so forth and so on, and that's just to keep the economic wheel turning for the U.S. government. And I may get in trouble for saying what I'm saying, but the truth's the light. And I'm just looking at the facts of the matter. You're allowing all of these things to go on, and yet, all of these things are still harming our body at these minimal levels. So somebody's not telling the truth somewhere. I don't know who or what it is. I'm not naming any names at this point or whatever, but somebody's not telling the truth at all.
So let me ask you this: drinking water out of plastic bottles, is that a way to transfer this into your system?
Oh, absolutely,
Oh,
absolutely, absolutely. Not only that, but the clothing that you wear has microplastics in it. Um, you have other jewelry, for instance. A lot of jewelry, instead of it being stone, it's acrylic. Acrylic is
mm,
nothing but plastic. Okay,
right.
so if you're wearing acrylic jewelry, that's another way for the body to absorb the microplastics that are in the acrylic per se. So we have to look at our environment, our personal environment, and we have to do things to alleviate some of the adverse effects that's included in our environment.
Right. Also, doing my research, I found out that there's a couple things that we can do as individuals to get the stuff out of our system, and I was happy to see that there were some things. The first one was add organic or fresh foods to your diet. So that's one way to
Exactly.
get this thing out. The other thing is engage in physical activity because I guess you can sweat the stuff right out of your body.
You
Um,
can.
the other one is adding breathing exercises to your routine. Increase your fiber intake. Obviously, that pushes stuff out of your body. Um, Consume detoxification supplements, to clean out your system. And then the interesting last one is just minimize your plastic consumption. But I'm not sure how we can regulate that one because, like you said, it's in just about everything. But the first one through five seem like there's something that each of us can do as individuals.
And you mentioned the fact that we all our water is in plastic bottles. The best way to get that out of your plastic bottles, as a matter of fact, if you boil your water before you drink it, it takes care of 90% of the microplastics that are in the water.
Really?
Oh,
What about
yes.
these filters that you buy?
What some of the filters that
Yeah,
have the
some of the
chart.
filters, the filtered water and the filter that you put on your refrigerator. Do those kind of siphon that stuff out also?
They do some better than others. When you have filters that have charcoal in it, that's a highly effective route out of the system and out of the environment that water and other substances are flowing through. Um, so that's what you want to look at now, as long as you continue to change those filters.
Right.
Because I go to work, we have a soft drink filter. I've never seen anybody change the filters in that machine in 3 years.
Well,
So
maybe they do it. Maybe they doing the work at night, PC.
I'm there at night.
Okay, well maybe they do it in the daytime.
So you have to, if you have filter systems, you have to pay attention to the recommended time in
Absolutely.
which you need to change those filters, and that'll help alleviate a lot of the microfibers that we're consuming on a regular basis.
Right, right. Wow. Okay. Well, hey, this is another subject that crotchety old men have kind of brought you as our audience, and hopefully you can take this to heart. Anything else you want to add on the subject before we close it out today and get to those great words of wisdom?
Well, my thing is, pay attention to your environment, pay attention to the changes in your environment, because as your environment changes, we have to make changes as well if we want to stay here for any length of time. So
Right.
that's my suggestion. What about you, George?
Well, like I said, exercise is always a great remedy for a lot of different things, and I would say, continue to do that. Try to eat, healthy. It's interesting, and I'll just as a side note, I'm not sure if people are aware that when you go to the grocery store, especially on the fruit, there's a numbering system, and if the numbering system if the number on the fruit has starts with a 4, that means that it has been, I believe
Genetically
that
altered.
it means no GMO. It
Or
hasn't
no
been
GMO, right?
it hasn't been genetically modified. If it's a 9, it means it's organic. If it's a 3, that means it's GMO. It means it's been genetically modified. And that's one of the things that me and my wife watch a lot when buying fruit at the store, is to make sure we buy it as a number 4 or number 9. So that's just a tidbit, and that could be our word of wisdom if you don't have anything for the day.
Well, I like to think I'm never without a loss of words.
Okay,
So,
well, take us on home then.
so here we go. How to begin rebuilding life from within. Love yourself unconditionally. Release your bottled up emotions. Make time for long walks alone. Avoid living beyond your means. Nurture your inner strength. Stop apologizing for being you, and surround yourself with positive people like my brother George.
Hey man, those some great words, man. That might be a podcast in itself, because of what I tell people. Hey, can't nobody make you happy but yourself. Because when everybody else leaves the room and you're left there by yourself,
That's
you
all you
better be
got.
happy.
That's right.
That's all you
That's
got.
right.
That's all
That's
you
right,
got.
George.
That's right. So as we always say in closing, as the crotchety old man, if you didn't know,
Now you know.
you know. All right, man. Take care. Peace.
All right. Peace. Peace, George.